Pixelation is not too good. Mercifully at the end. Now, coming back to copyright, as I mentioned earlier, first of all, let's take the questions on the clip. gone through 4 minutes of it. So why I showed it to you is there are a few issues which actually come in practice for an opinion. But, first of all, let's start with very basic. Let me put it to the audience. How many copyrights are there in a song?
Singer, lyricist, music.
Sorry?
Singer, lyricist, music.
Yes, music means, can you be music?
Music directors.
Yes. Can you be more explicit? You're partly correct.
Composer.
Sound.
The composer.
Right.
Yeah. There's a composer, one. Okay? Lyricist, two. Anything else?
Singer.
Singer will come under performance rights, neighboring rights. I am talking about the per se song. Singer will also be there with neighboring rights.
The producer's right. The producer's
No, that is different. That's cinematography. You assign on those rights. Third, very important, is sound recording, subject matter of copyright. Remember. So basically, in a song with lyrics, there are 3 copyrights. In an instrumental without lyrics, there are 2 copyrights. Okay. Second issue here, what are the neighboring rights? One you mentioned is singer. Second, any other neighboring rights? Broadcast rights. Somebody has an exclusive, earlier Doordarshan, Chayagit, remember all those? They had what is known as the broadcast right. Third is performance rights would go to the singer, Muhammad Rafi in this case, as well as to Guru Dutt, because he has acted out this. They would both be liable for performance rights. Now it gets a little bit more complicated. This opinion, I'll tell you about the actual real life. You know that Mughal-e-Azam was the first old film to be colored, right? Thankfully, all that colorization and all was done in India. In this issue, the actual parties had come to us to have it colorized and by a Dubai-based company. And they would then do it, be a sort of central repository of the IP of many such films, license them to India, Pakistan, including Gulf. So, classic case of transfer pricing. Actually, I've encountered this. Next, an issue emanating from it. What would a colorization right be? Would you have to pay the producer or not? Would you say it's a right of integrity is infringed?
Yes.
Yes, even I think so. It's a varied opinion. But I also think so. If you ask me, this poor Guru that committed suicide, if he had not done so, you would have seen the colorized version and done so. So, yes, very strongly when I feel. Then the cinematographic, the producer has the rights in the film. And normally what happens is, music rights are separate. Music is invariably in an Indian film is released almost a month before the film hits the screen. Because it's assigned away. And then, producer takes over the rights of all these people. Then the producer becomes the sole copyright owner. This is done through that association, IMPPA, Indian Motion Picture Association. Okay. One more thing before we end copyright. Today there are so many, especially in music, there are so many different singers with different popularities of songs. You have not mentioned, you struck me, which I think I should mention is. The Act also provides for something known as copyright societies. They are these independent bodies. Generally there is only one body for each class of work. And if you want to use that work, you have to pay a particular amount of royalties at copyright society. How many of you have booked halls in functions for parties? And that hotel or whoever has said, "No, sir, आपको license का पैसा देना पड़ेगा, 2,000, 3,000 to the copyright society for playing music." So there are copyrights which actually collect from all sources and try and make an equitable distribution to authors, and they are mainly in terms of music. In fact, one of these functionaries was telling me that today the main infringing device for music is not the CD or the cassette, it is your mobile phone, the chip on the mobile phone. According to me, there also, according to me, if you have a private party in a hotel, it does not amount to infringement, because the private party in the hotel is an extension of your house. Because you cannot accommodate, say, 50 people in a house, you book a hall. But you go and sit in a restaurant where members of the public can come and sit, have a meal, listen to music, yes. You have to pay the copyright society. There's one insight I actually opinions to that effect. Now we go, copyright is an adjunct to trademark protection. As I said, you have a device mark or a label mark. You actually have an artistic work under which you can claim copyright protection, and as I mentioned, you can take a sub-inspector's help in criminal action. Then this is another very interesting issue where only courts have ruled. Today, let's say a copyright. You are an employee in a company, and by your contract of employment, all copyrights vest with the company. So what is the term of that copyright? Normally, because the Act only says 60 years after death of owner. A corporation has an infinite life. So what would be the life of the copyright? Any thoughts on that? Well, courts have ruled in England, creator of copyright has to be an individual and is deemed to assign it to the corporation. Copyright still would end 60 years after death. This is what court ruling, nothing in the Act. Now, under 52J, exceptions to infringement, this is a very strange provision without the law mentioning whether it has to be read in conjunction or disjointly. The first provision, 52I and 52J, if I recall correctly. 52I says that if you use somebody else's musical, artistic, or cinematic activity, you have to pay him royalty. 52J says if before using someone's cinematographic, or when using someone's cinematographic or music work, you have to take his permission. Now, does this amount, okay, I am using it, then I say, sorry, I used your work, here's the royalty, or do I have to take your permission in advance? This is a vexing question of law. It's not answered, it's answered one way by one court and the other way by the other court. This is also a very big issue in copyright. Now, the next IP we come to is designs. Designs, there's a Designs Act 2000, where aesthetics, anything which is like, say, you have a very fancy tab, or you even have a dress designer, good dress, you can actually register it as a design. See, when you actually, now I'll explain to you, when you create it, because of the creation, you get copyright. But if you want to commercially exploit it, you have to register it as a design. Because section 15 of the Copyright Act says that any copyrighted article, if copies are made by machine or any other process, more than 50 copies, it loses copyright. So you have to register it as a design. As a design is anything aesthetic, form or function based, it's an adjunct to copyright law. It has a gaining importance of design. Now in this also there is one vexing question which nobody has really answered. Earlier, especially our Indian painters, they used to put one painting up for sale in the gallery. Today the practice is they make numbered signed 200 copies. I know for a fact because one of my friends has bought one of those copies. They make 200 copies. Would that painter lose his copyright by virtue of this section 15 of the Copyright Act? Because he has made copies with a mechanical process and more than 50 copies. Answer is yes, you have to be careful. This is one of the loopholes. Anything, design may be anything. The most wackiest one which I tried and pull out, and just to give you a flavor of the design. See the heels of the shoes. I don't know. I've never seen such shoes. It's a matter of time, I think, before somewhere there in India. Designer is one Kurt Geiger for your information. And there is this gold-plated Commode and Bidet. There is also a design, they're all registered designs. Now, other intellectual property rights. I think we're running a little short of time. Anyway, I'll skip through the balance slides. The meat of the presentation is almost over. Now, we have what is known as geographical indications. Geographical indications, rather than going to the law, explain very, very simply. Earlier, for years together, there was Scotch whiskey. Everybody's heard of Scotch whiskey? If not, actually tasted it. So, Scotch whiskey was it. Now, in India, they brought what is known as Peter Scott, Corday and Company from Bangalore. Then McDowell brought what is known as single malt. Now, the Scotch Whisky Association took objection, saying if you use the term Scotch, it has to be from Scotland. Because of geography. Same way, the India had brought out Indian champagne, Marquis de Pompadour. I don't know if you know it. And then suddenly they changed the name to sparkling wine. Why? Because Champagne is the name of the district in France. You can only have Champagne emanating from France, nowhere else in the world. In fact, that even in the 1900s there was a challenge that in Spain, There is a firm called Costa Brava. They produce what is known as Spanish champagne. So actually Bollinger, one of the biggest manufacturers of champagne in Champagne, France, sued them successfully and got the name champagne thrown out. So that is why if a particular article emanates from a particular geography, it is entitled to a protection known as geographical indicator. Now there are, even today, this act is new, despite that there are about, last count, over 150 geographical indicators in India itself. There are some different varieties of rice from Andhra Pradesh. Sadly, Basmati is not in that list. There is cashew fenny, there are Kolhapuri chappals, there is the Sholapur coverlets, duvets. So there are plenty of those things there. As I said earlier, plant varieties are there. Biodiversity I have already covered. Trade secrets and know-how. That is a very important part of IP. Now, trade secrets does not get its sort of enforcement under the Act, but through law of contract. Which is the most famous trade secret in the world, anyone knows?
Coca-Cola.
Yes, the formula of Coca-Cola. Because if they patent it, after 20 years it goes into the public domain. They lost it. That is why it's been kept as a trade secret, deliberately. And there is this traditional knowledge, that is like Neem is there, Haldi is there, Yoga is there, which is out of the scope. But it's also an IP. I mean, today Indian can market and sell it and make money from it. That unique IP. So there's character merchandising, which I told you about, Inspector Clouseau earlier. Then this shape. This is a very interesting case which we had advised on. There is this bottle of vodka, which is not even available in India, called Gorbachev. It is this unique shape. This shape actually has this onion-shaped dome followed by a base. Now there was an Indian company which wanted to bring vodka in a similar bottle, which had a green label. I think Himalaya distilleries. But Gorbachev successfully preempted them from bringing that shape. Despite the fact that that shape, the Indian company had registered that shape as a design, and also Gorbachev is not available officially in India. Despite that, they managed to injure Bombay High Court. Justice Chandrachud gave them. I was present in court. So this is also an IP. Second is the shape of the Zippo lighter. It's registered as a trademark. Third is trade dress. Colgate has successfully sued Anchor White toothpaste on its packaging. It's red distinctive packaging. Because in the rural area, people can't read. In fact, they don't say toothpaste. They say, "Bhai, Colgate do hai." That's how the brand penetration is. This is also an IP. Now we come to our boring old transfer pricing again. Management services, which I think most of you would have read, because everything what I am going to discuss is there in OECD or in transfer pricing. But basically very few points we'll touch upon. Service is not defined, whether intra-group services are chargeable, and what is an arm's length charge. All questions, no answers. Again, what is the criteria of defining intra-group services? Payment, arrangement, contractual nomenclature, benefits test. One very interesting issue is the stewardship issue. Recently, the Morgan Stanley judgment in the Supreme Court brought the issue of stewardship and said that in case of a stewardship, no PE is created. I think we can use this very much to our benefit in transfer pricing management. If we can prove stewardship, it's a very good tool for tax planning. We said there are no services. My overseas parent is just coming here to oversee his investment. He's a steward. If he had not given me these directions, the company would have made less profit or would have made a loss. This is one issue which I just wanted to highlight. Nothing more. Devendra, how is the time scenario? 5 minutes? Alright. Then again, cost sharing arrangements, cost contribution arrangements. There are these different issues which one has to consider. I'm just glossing through issues because the time is a little bit of a constraint. But any particular question, I'll be happy to. 92B obligation, effect of subsidies. What happens if one service, one country has a subsidy and another service doesn't have? There is no answer. What are the allocation keys? I can virtually play about with the numbers using different allocation keys and have different arm's length pricing. Then there's the OECD and the Australian tax office view. Then post-tax, pre-tax effect. Total non-uniform accounting standards. In fact, some of the smaller countries don't have accounting standards. What do you do on that? Then buy and buy out payments. I mean, to get into the service, you have to pay an amount to buy in. Get out, you may get a buyout. Well, how do you quantify the benefits? Then future benefits, whether they are there or questionable. Because most of these, I mean, if you see the corporate world, they say synergy and better cost control and all. 99% of the case it doesn't happen. It collapses. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think that is by and large the case. And as I said, multiple allocation keys. And here we can ask as many questions as we want without any answers. In these two things, before going, I would say one thing. Basically, since I'm a tax lawyer, I look at it from the perspective of a dispute. I presume that the TPO is going to challenge my contention, and I generally look at it from a tribunal level perspective when I analyze. There, one thing is the transfer pricing law gives the initial onus of proof of arm's length on the SSE, unlike the other case. But once you satisfy the onus of proof, the burden of proof shifts to the TPO or the assessing officer. Then his job to prove that what I have done is wrong. So you have to actually take him upon that. You prove that what I have done is totally unfair or benefits me or anything. And in the area of these intangibles and services and all, basically, you don't need to be 100% right. If you are 50.1% right, it's enough. And he is 49.9% right. It's a preponderance of convenience or judgment. This is what ideally you must build up your case on. Get as much supporting material as you can, because in this tax law is totally deficient. In fact, a lot of people, I mean those who were representing the tax council, don't even know the nuances of IP law, which I've actually found, which I've shown one or two judgments which I've taken. Okay, now international rulings. Do I need to cover this, or is everyone aware of it? I mean, sorry? Carry on? Okay, because very famous, I think they must have been done several times. Indian rulings also. LG Special, so there will be a session on Maruti and LG Special, so I didn't cover it. I just wanted to mark this as very important, because I think there is a session on AMP, right, which I left out deliberately. I was told that it's good. But one issue, one ruling which is not covered is tally. You have to be very, very careful. There's a 66-page order of the Bangalore Tribunal which came in a couple of years ago, and it was favoring the revenue. It was in relation to software transfer between an Indian company and its Dubai sub. And there too, some ridiculous amount of 400 crores was put as an addition. Now, I have just read the order, it's a very, very comprehensive order, and quite honestly, the revenue has used a method which is not even prescribed in transfer pricing, the excess earning methods, to attribute a value. Then the SSE has not even considered regular depreciation or shelf life of the software. I mean, today if I have Windows, it's not going to continue for 50 years. And then newer and newer versions coming, old one will go in the waste basket. This is a very interesting judgment, not only from the point of view that if you want a brief on this excess earning valuation method, which is not in the TP prescribed methods, but you also want to see an insight into the mind of the tribunal. This is a beautiful judgment.
Is it a Reliance Group company?
Sorry?
Tally, is it a Reliance
No, no. It's an accounting firm.
Yeah, but that is
Accounts.
Yeah.
I see, now it's Reliance. Those times it was not Reliance, I know.
Okay, might be earlier.
This was about 2.5, 3 years ago. Bangalore Tribunal, the Dubai sub. I thought that was a small private company. Now it's Reliance. I wasn't aware of that.
That's why when you said they have not charged depreciation, they have a old habit of not charging depreciation.
No, that is there, because of which
I don't think
all this book profit and all came because of Reliance, 115J earlier. Okay. Now, this is another publication which one of you buy, actually Taxman gets it out. Every year they have a publication called Let Us Share, the Income Tax Department brings it. They give you a very good insight into their working. This is just one example, I mean it's not important, just as an example. Please read this publication to get an insight, not only in TP and intangible, but in all other aspects you get a very good insight into what the TPO or the AO thinks. Valuation. This is also simple thing which one has to value IP. I'll go fast over it because there is nothing new in this. Only thing is, one thing in valuation, that all these methods are based on subjective assumption and adjustment. Believe me, if I tweak one assumption or I tweak one discount rate, my actual value goes for toss. Especially in the realm of IP. Where basically it's on the additional value added and additional cash flows and additional profit. If I tweak it a little bit here and there, it goes. Then transactions, I think most of which we've already covered. Assignment, and they've included intangibles, and most of it is just repetitive. And audit issues, these are the main audit issues. Ad expenditure, this marketing will be done. Marketing, cherry picking, bright line, comparables. Issue of secret comparables again. I don't know if anyone has challenged secret comparables. But in my opinion, as an advocate, I have the right to cross-examine not only the TPO but from the person whose comparables are used against me on ground of natural justice. I don't know anyone in this room has actually done it. And this is one thing which I'd like to just point out, because to my knowledge also nobody has done it. But if the issue arises, I may do it, because, and I'm sure I'll get a favorable ruling. And there is this defense of lex non cogit et impossible. There is a legal maxim which says the law does not compel you to do something impossible. This is a defense of last resort. You must only take it when your back is to the wall, but it is there. Then ultimately what happens is these three things are most important: the beginning and end of transfer pricing and documented. Then the more things change, the more they remain the same. That's what the French term says. And this is all these things which one has to consider. And there am and before I end, I just want to tell an anecdote or a joke. There was a big IP convention. And the delegates, after the day's convention, took a walk down DN Road, near VT. They wanted to see VT architecture. So all these people, came running in. So software, movies, music, CD, they were aghast because coming from the US, which has very stringent IP laws. So they told the fellow, "Are you aware that these are all copyrighted products? You could be prosecuted." That fellow said, "Don't be angry, sir. Don't be angry, sir. Whatever we copy, we copyright." Any questions, please?
In case of assessments, as far as valuation is concerned, as you said, there is no rocket science to this, and the officers are using their assumptions very differently, and the whole valuation with a small change is really making a lot of difference.
Yes, absolutely.
How do you really?
As I said, it all boils down to proving your case. You have to be 50.001% vis-a-vis the officer's 49.99. Ultimately, it's up to your counsel or the person you argue that your case is reasonable and the officer's case is unreasonable. As I said, I am taking it from a tribunal level. You may have to go up to there. I mean, that is the only way which I can think of. You have a paper. That is why you have to do your homework and be that infinitesimal bit better than what the officer or a TPO can throw at you. Have sound reasoning for your them. Make sure that you have not cherry-picked assumptions. That's what I mean.